I'm Mahdi Shaheeb Sher. My website is www.shaheeb.com. One of my interests in the world is colonialism. I think that colonialism and European colonialism is still an important issue in the world. I think that we still have an existence of colonialism and European colonialism in the world. But I think that the cause of colonialism and the subject of colonialism is a very sensitive one. I think that colonialism is probably responsible for more loss of life than probably all of the wars combined in world history. If you look at all of the wars that have occurred in world history and you combine the loss of life incurred by those wars, you'd probably find that it comes to less than a billion in terms of loss of life. But I think when you look at colonialism and the cost of life that colonialism has had with the world and the loss of life that's incurred by colonialism, then the figure with colonialism actually reaches over 3 or 4 billion people who've lost their lives as a result of colonialism. So you can see that there's a significant difference between colonialism and the cost of life with war itself. Um, I think with colonialism, um, it's an eradication of whole populations with whole continents, such as North America and Canada, Central America and America, Australia. I mean, these are large countries on the continents as well, with large populations, native populations, that through colonialism have been wiped out through disease and through perhaps introduction of weapons and other cultural differences, but primarily through disease. I think most of these native populations with these countries have been wiped out through disease and maybe large scale diseases like smallpox as well, and various other diseases. And I think when you look at the number of lives that diseases are responsible for, then it is a higher number than what that war exacts from war. So I think that disease has more potential to take life than war does. And I think that's exactly what has happened in history, that diseases and colonialism and the combination of colonialism and disease have exacted a high cost of life from the world. And we're looking at probably billions in terms of the populations that have existed before colonialism. I think there was something like a billion population in Central America, maybe a billion population in North America, maybe a billion native population in Australia. Perhaps there have been other areas where there have been close to a billion native population, a population of native people. So I think when you look at the large territories involved, and the potentially large populations involved, and the large scale deployment of diseases, then you can actually consider that the cost of colonialism could actually be quite high, running into billions of people that have lost their lives. I think when it comes to Native Americans in America, which is occupied by United States of America now, they lost at least 600 million people to start with, and I think that has been compounded by the drop of population and reproduction and breeding, and further war and death and escalation of war and death. So I think that these populations are depleted and they become extinct. So it's the extinction of populations that is most concerning. I think when it comes to war, there isn't so much an extinction of population, maybe war fatalities. I think when it comes to colonialism, there is an issue of extinction of populations. And that is very alarming and concerning, that there can be a widespread loss of life in a relatively short period of time, maybe 3 to 5 years or 10 years. I think that's how long colonialism takes to perhaps take a hold of a whole country or a territory or a continent. And I think that when you look at places like Canada, Australia, America, maybe South America as well, and South Africa, um, colonial nations around the globe, and they're quite significant in number. But they all command a large population, um, because of the depletion of a native population and an introduction of a foreign population into that territory or that land space. So it is quite significant to see that colonialism is a significant threat to life in the world. It's one of the challenges that the world faces in terms of how it progresses into the future and how it advances and how it's able to uh, develop from its problems and deal with its own problems. I think if the world is able to advance and progress, it does need to deal with some of its most barbaric and savage problems, such as war, death, and colonialism. I think with these issues of famine and disease and war and colonialism, I think that these things can be eradicated quite readily if people were inclined to come together and discuss these things openly and honestly, so that there is some kind of a discussion about the issues that arise from these things. And if they can confront these challenges over a prolonged and sustained period of time, then maybe there is some resolve towards solving these problems. And I think that's what there should be. There shouldn't be an absence of some concerted action towards these problems, but there should be an active resolution towards solving these problems permanently and concurrently, as a permanent state of human character and resolve. And I think if that was the psychology of a human person, to be able to confront these challenges in a very dignified and coordinated manner, then perhaps they can overcome these challenges in a very significant way for the future. So I think that we do have the capacity to undertake these things. And I think that that's probably one of the best ways we can deal with some of these problems like war, famine, disease, and colonialism. I think colonialism is European by its origin, and it is fundamentally a depletion and an extinction of a host population, and an introduction of a foreign population. And this occurs not just in large scale territories in Canada, Australia, and Central America, various other places around the world, but it also it's also a concept in space as well, where colonialism is envisioned as some kind of a concept of colonies on planets, colonies on planets and on space stations, and perhaps with space travel and space missions. There can be planets with colonies, and in an introduction of human populations to colonize planets, which are perhaps foreign to human domestication. So I think these are real issues that perhaps command some interest and attention from the world, because people are quite perplexed as to why there is an issue of colonialism in the world. We may consider that it originates from Europe, but why it has originated and for what purpose colonialism is functioning in the world is quite unclear. And I think it's with these questions that we can perhaps test uh, situation with colonialism, especially in its modern day form. We still have modern day slavery with 9 to 5 job culture, a 9 to 5 work ethics. I think corporations command a huge labour force throughout the world, running into millions per country. I think they command at least 20 million people for every country on earth, and there's something like 100 countries in the world. So we're looking at over 200 million in terms of population. We're looking at probably a billion workforce throughout the globe. And for that to be commanded on a 9 to 5 daily basis, 9 to 5 work hours, that's 10 hours of work a day. That's three quarters of our day spent on kind of consuming our need to live our lives, then it is a very high cost and a price to pay to simply live our lives. I think to spend 3 quarters of our daily lives simply to exist with our lives is a huge price and cost to pay for life. And I think it should be more of the magnitude of perhaps 2 to 3 hours of work a day. I think that would be a more manageable and more leisurely and perhaps realistic, factual, and perhaps more actual concurrent pace of work within the order of life in nature. And it shouldn't be so much of a case of overburdening life with too many work hours, but it should be the case of perhaps having a natural basis of work according to natural laws, according to the natural laws of society as well, that perhaps it can be more manageable to the tune of 2 to 3 hours of work a day. That's what we should perhaps use to perhaps sustain a daily life. And I think if we can manage that as well, then we can eradicate modern day slavery, which is very much linked to colonialism. And I think that 9 to 5 working hours is very consuming for an individual. We should have, I think, at least 3 quarters of our day available for individual freedom, for individual liberty, for individual happiness and freedom. And I think if a person does have the the capacity for this freedom and liberty, then it is a very remarkable life and a very special life to be able to live that kind of a free free life full of liberty for most of his available day, rather than a working day that has to be consumed just to function for the mere right to function with life. I don't think we should just have a right to life. I think we should have the full freedom and liberty of life to be enjoyed with full happiness of life. And that's my view about the right and dignity of human people and colonialism. Thank you very much.